Sa Bharat Maharaj, Ekala alone only, Pula Ashrama Upavane, in the garden situated in Pulaham Ashram, Vivida Kusama Kisalaya Tulasika Ambu Bihi, with varieties of flowers, twigs, and tulsi leaves, as well as with water. Kandamula Pala Upaharari, by offering of roots, bulbs, and fruits, cha, and Sami Hamana, performing Bhagavata of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Aradhanam, worshipping, Vivikta, purified, Uparata, being freed from, Vishaya Abhilasa, desire for material sense enjoyment, Upabrita, increased, Upasama, tranquility, Param, transcendental, Nirvitim, satisfaction, Avapa, he obtained. The translation by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. In the gardens of Pulaha Ashram, Maharaja Bharata lived alone and collected a variety of flowers, twigs, and tulsi leaves. He also collected the water of the Gandaki River, as well as various roots, fruits, and bulbs. With these, he offered food to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, and worshiping him, he remained satisfied. In this way, his heart was completely uncontaminated, and he did not have the least desire for material enjoyment. All material desires vanished. In this steady position, he felt full satisfaction and was situated in devotional service. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Everyone is searching after peace of mind. This is obtainable only when one is completely freed from the desire for material sense gratification and is engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, as is stated in Bhagavad Gita. Patram pushpam palam toyam yo me bhaktya prayasati, 9:26. Worship of the Lord is not at all expensive. This kind of makes me laugh a little because I just was spending the weekend in Chicago. Actually, more than starting last Thursday through Sunday, they had a grand celebration for the 50th anniversary of the installation of Kishore Kishori. And I had a little hand in that since I'm the one who, at Prabhupada's request, found Kishore Kishori, and they were worshipped in the first second Pandal program in Bombay, and then sent to Chicago. But this weekend was like over the top, exquisite, beautiful worship with, well, I can't even imagine how much was spent on flowers. I mean, everywhere were these gorgeous, beautiful flower decorations. Prabhupada's Vyasa sign, the Vyasa sign itself was gorgeously, or the asana of the deities, even on the top where there would normally, like, the tops of the altar have these little, whatever you call them, and there was vases up there. I mean, how they got them up there, because they have a gigantic Vyasa sign. Asana. Anyways, it was quite overwhelming. And then the grand finale was a Pushpa Abhishek. And there was buckets after buckets of different colors of rose petals. And roses are a little costly generally, and the amount of flowers that came. And of course, after the Pushpa Abhishek, then they were thrown out among the devotees who were then collecting them and having flower fights between themselves all the while the kirtan was going on. So it was quite a wonderful event, but it's saying not so costly. I'm sure it was very costly here. Let's find my place here. Yeah, worship of the Lord is not at all expensive. And of course, that is a fact. It can be, as stated, a fruit, a flower, a leaf. But there's been times when Srila Prabhupada has specifically said, like in a letter to Madhavisa regarding Jagannath Rath Yatra. Madhavisa at the time, he was the president in San Francisco, and San Francisco was the site of the first Rath Yatras. And so then he was telling him, and spend more for flowers, So not at all expensive, but when one is able to spend more for the worship. And if not, then a little flower, a little fruit, some water. The Supreme Lord accepts these offerings when they are offered with love and devotion. In this way, one can become freed from material desires. As long as one maintains material desires, he cannot be happy. As soon as one engages in the devotional service of the Lord, his mind is purified of all material desires. Then one becomes fully satisfied. And then this beautiful verse from the Bhagavatam, Savapum Samparo Dhammo, Yato Bhaktir Doksaje, Ahoitiki Apritahata, Yayatma Suprasidate, Vasudeva Bhagavati, Bhakti Yoga Prayojita, Janayatyastu Vayagyam, Nanam Chayat Ahoitikum. The supreme occupation, Dharma, for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving service, loving devotional service unto the transcendental Lord. So this loving devotional service was actually Prabhupada's definition of bhakti, loving devotional service to the Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted in order to completely satisfy the self. By rendering devotional service unto the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. And this is Bhagavatam 1, 2, 6, and 7. These are the instructions given in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the supreme Vedic literature. One may not be able to go to Pulaha Ashram, but wherever one is, one can happily render devotional service to the Lord by adopting the processes mentioned above. Hare Krishna. So from this chapter and the previous chapter leading up to this, it's understood when the seed or fruit of activity is burned by the fire of knowledge, the spiritual properties and the mystic powers automatically manifest. But that's not what our goal is. They manifest alongside bhakti. And bhakti yoga is not affected by these mystic powers. We tend to sometimes become somewhat enamored, by something that seems so wonderful, just like now people do a lot of yoga practices. But these yoga practices, without being connected to bhakti, they actually push one away from the practice of bhakti. So we have to keep in mind that bhakti connects us with Krishna. And nowadays, people use the word bhakti like salt and pepper, But bhakti is that which connects us with Krishna and helps us develop our loving propensity. Prabhupada explained that an ordinary yogi is captivated by mystic powers. We see so many pictures nowadays, people with strange bodily postures, we think that's some accomplishment, to some degree, it's an accomplishment. But the progress for bhakti is checked. So a perfect yogi does not welcome this type of activity because the mind is restless and undependable. It always has to be under control. And even the mind of an advanced yogi probably gave the example of Savari Muni. His mind created such a disturbance. He was like a high-level controlled yogi, and yet the mind disturbed him so much he lost his yogic mystic powers. So due to a restless mind, even very advanced yogis can fall down. Not to speak of our little selves in this intense, relentless Kali Yuga. The mind is so restless, and it can induce even the perfected yogi to be controlled by the senses. And so Rishabh Dev, for the instruction of all yogis, showed the process. He showed the process of putting the body. He was traveling in South India through the provinces of Karnataka, Kanaka, Venka, and Kutaka. And then he came to this place, Kutachala, and suddenly there was this forest fire. It was burning both the forest and Lord Rishabh Dev's body to ashes, and he wasn't disturbed. So the pastimes of Lord Rishabh Dev as a liberated soul were known by the king of Konaka, Venka, and Kutaka. And the name of this king was Arhat. And later, this king set forth the basic principles of Jainism. So the Jain people, they're not like such a widely known sect, but they have these supreme principles of Jains is in the form of nonviolence, ahimsa. And actually, even Jains, to some degree nowadays, if you see people with masks, of course, now you see people with masks, it's like a residue from the recent pandemic, but they always wore masks. And why they were wearing these masks and covering their mouth and their nose was so they wouldn't maybe breathe in some innocent little living entity, So that was their main principle. And then the three guiding principles, they're known as the three jewels of the Jains, are the right belief, the right knowledge, and the right conduct. But the main point was this nonviolence, this ahimsa. So Rishabh Dev sent forth the principles of religion that can free one from material bondage. And he put an end to all kinds of atheistic activities. So on this earth, the place known as Bharata, or what we normally see as India, was a very pious land because the Supreme Lord appeared there when he wanted to incarnate. And Rishabh Dev neglected all the possibility for mystic powers, which the so-called yogis are going after. And because of the beauty of devotional service, the devotees are not really inclined towards mystic power. Lord Krishna, Yogeshwara, the master of all yogic power, he can exhibit all the powers on behalf of his devotees. But devotional service, bhakti yoga, is more valuable than all the yogic mystic powers. And devotees who are sometimes misled, aspiring for just liberation and mystic powers, that happens, you get a little bewildered. But the Supreme Lord gives these devotees whatever they desire, but they can't attain the most important function of devotional service. So devotional service to the Lord is a guarantee for those who don't desire for liberation and mystic power. So the Lord Rishabh Dev refused to manifest mystic power perfection. And Maharaj Parikshit was asking why he did not accept them, because for a devotee, these things are not disturbing. Devotee is never distressed or a devotee who is mature in his spiritual practice is never distressed or satisfied by the material opulence, because the main concern for the devotee is how to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And if by the grace of the Supreme Lord a devotee does achieve extraordinary opulence, immediately he would utilize that opportunity for the Lord's service. He's not disturbed by the opulence. He doesn't get bewildered like, oh, maybe I should get this, maybe I should get that, No, let me serve Krishna. In the Gita, it's on 18:5, it said that the acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance are not to be given up, but should be performed. So indeed, sacrifice, charity, and penance can purify great souls when they're offered and performed on behalf of the Supreme Lord. So that no one on any level, it said they should not renounce chantings of Hare Krishna mantra. So there are among like the Mayavadis or impersonalists, they will actually chant Hare Krishna. They'll even worship the deity, but they think that is something to be given up once they obtain their level, what they consider of a level of perfection, which is not depending, in their minds, not depending on Krishna. So this is not an advised thing to give up chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And the same way, one should not renounce charity or tapasya. Tapasya is required. So the yoga system for control of the mind and senses must be followed. And Lord Rishabdev, he showed how severe types of tapasya could be performed, and he set an example for others. An uncontrolled mind has a following: lust, anger, greed, madness, envy, illusion. So, when the mind is not controlled, then these different qualities follow it. And Prabhupada said they can kill the yogi. When the mind is controlled, when the yogi is controlled by the mind, and he falls into material illusion. So therefore, one must be careful to control the mind, because when we understand the mind is the original cause of material bondage. And then come these little enemies of anger, pride, greed, lamentation, illusion, and fear. So the best way to control the mind is to engage it always in Krishna consciousness. Savai Mana Krishna Padara Avinda. We all have the experience, most likely, except for those of you great souls who are fully controlled. We sit down to put our hand in that bead bag, we start to chant, and all of a sudden our mind just mystically throws in all kinds of other situations. Oh yeah, I have to do this, I have to do that. You know how it goes. So this mind control, it is a very integral part even in bhakti yoga, so that we can properly chant. One of the offenses to chanting is to maintain material attachment even after understanding so many things. And this material attachment, it's always like calling us in subtle and gross ways, and that mind is the one that kicks it off. And then it comes followed right behind by, Prabhupada described, many enemies: this, anger, pride, greed, lamentation, illusion, and fear. If you think of Lord Hiranyakashipu, not Lord Hiranyakashipu, so had these heads, 10 heads: anger, pride, greed, lust, lamentation, illusion, and fear. They're always there, right behind the uncontrolled mind. So in the Vedic literature, it's expressed how people in Kali will be more inclined to accept someone as supreme. Somebody comes up, they speak very authoritatively, and immediately, oh. So they accept it, and almost to the point of accepting that person as God or godlike. And then they'll accept any religious system that's opposed to Vedic principles. And that's due to the situation in Kali, where the Manda Samanda Mataya, in general, the people of Kali, their minds are always disturbed. And in general, there's no spiritual culture, and everyone is very fallen. And in our little short lifetimes, we've seen this happen. Those of us who are a bit older, we remember our lives were a little bit simpler when we started out. And gradually, it's like an explosion of Kali Yuga, and things are becoming so drastic. So due to this, lack of disciplined mind, due to this lack of accepting Krishna or Jesus, but accepting a bona fide personality as a supreme Lord, then there's no spiritual culture. And then people accept and create their own religious systems. And Prabhupada said, this is a great misfortune. It's a misfortune because they forget Vedic principles. And then following non-Vedic principles in this age, they're thinking themselves as supreme. And then they spread atheism all over the world. Recently, I saw a little article, and the article was about how vegetarians, people who have been vegetarians for years, even decades, are suddenly reverting to meat eating. And then I found out this is even happening among the devotees. So Kali Yuga is just relentless, and we really need to be very committed to our practice of bhakti yoga, to serving Krishna, and pray to Krishna, just like Prabhupada was praying to the deities in Boston, please don't let me fall into Maya. You know, if Prabhupada's praying like that, what should we be doing? You know, there was like a description in the sixth chapter, and I'll just read what it said. Presently, the hippies in the Western countries are fitting this description of they're irresponsible, they're unregulated. They don't bathe, they deride standard Vedic knowledge. So like Rishabh Devi was acting like a madman, and it said, but his stool and urine were aromatic, so much so that they nicely scented the entire countryside for miles around. But due to the influence of the age of Kali, these poor hippies and population in general are apt to concoct false religious systems. Then the 12th canto in the 3rd chapter, it's Lavanayam Kishadaranam. So this is predicted how fallen souls will behave. And then, infamously, they'll keep their hair long and consider themselves beautiful. And then we're seeing that even within our own society, that the long hairs have become, again, back in vogue. But there's so many subtle implications. And Prabhupada was giving us a very clear standards to follow. And now sometimes it's kind of considered, well, that was Zen. We're not hippies. We're above that. And at the same time, Bhagavatam says certain things, and it's like, and Prabhupada taught us those things, and we're still kind of like questioning them. We need to be a little careful. We need to be clear in our spiritual resolve so that we don't become confused and deviated. In the CC, there's this Bharata Bhumite Hoyala Manusha Janma Yara Janma Sartaka Kari Kara Para Upakara Adi 9:14. So in this verse, the Bharat Varsa, it's a pious land, and the followers of the Vedic literature understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead in its different incarnations. And then we're privileged to glorify the Lord by following the direction of Vedic literature. And then after realizing the glories of human life, people should take up the mission to spread the importance of human life throughout the world. This is the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, And it's pointed out that this Adi Punyam, it indicates there are certainly many other pious men throughout the world, but the people of Bharatvarsa, India, are even more pious. And of course, nowadays we see how even in India, and the people of India have also become infatuated and under the influence of Kali. Kali Yuga is an equal opportunity employer. So Madhvacharya also recognized the land of Bharatvarsa. And Vishasad Bharat Punyam. Throughout the world, there's no question of Bhagavad Bhakti or devotional service. It's not happening. But the people of Bharatvarsa, they understand those who are fortunate understand the devotional service of Lord. So Prabhupada concluded, thus every inhabitant of Bharata Varsa can perfect his life by discharging Bhagavat Bhakti and then preach this message throughout the world for the benefit of everyone. So it's, we see nowadays that many, more than many, a great deal of our temples have become, we can say, they're being managed and taken care of by people from India. Sometimes we get little like, is this all right? What's happening here? Where are the Western devotees? But when you think about this verse from the Adi Lila, where actually the people of Bharata are being extolled, learn this science and understand this devotional service, and then go out, then perfect your life, and then go out and preach the message. That's actually what's happening. There's going to be this period of, I call it the happy Hinduism. But if they actually become influenced by bhakti and they actually practice Krishna consciousness, then they can actually benefit the world. And then we can see again, hopefully, a return of what was termed the Hare Krishna explosion, when devotees from all parts of the world became totally infatuated by the mission of Lord Chaitanya, and pockets of devotees everywhere, all over America, all over Europe, but to speak of Russia now, and South America and Central America, and so many places, even in places where you were forbidden to go and preach in the Middle East, there's pockets of devotees, and they're bringing the message of Mahaprabhu, and it's the Indians who are doing it. So on one hand, it's a little, you go to the temple, it used to be like, I was told by one godbrother, Indian body, they would go to the temple and it was only Western devotees, so they'd stand in the back and they felt out of place. And now we're kind of in the same position. We go to the temples and there's just, Indian devotees, and we kind of sometimes stand in the back. But I can understand from this verse, it's part of Lord Chaitanya's program. Get these people out there preaching Krishna consciousness to everyone. In the Satya Yuga, the teachings of Rishabh Dev were for the people of all yugas, Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and Prabhupada said especially Kali Yuga. And that the instructions are so powerful that even in this age of Kali Yuga, one can attain perfection simply by explaining the instructions, following in the footsteps of the acharyas, or listening to the instructions with great attention. And then by doing this, one can actually attain pure devotional service to Krishna. In the verse that was mentioned, this 126, that this is the process to develop our love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we've got this propensity for love. Love means someone else. Love can't be executed only by one. There must be another one. So Prabhupada was explaining, I love somebody loves me. And as soon as there is a question of love, there must be a lover. There must be beloved. And the transaction, and then love is prema pumartho maham. So everyone has this loving propensity to love someone. First of all, love begins family, father, mother, sister, brother, and you extend your love to your society, your community, your nation, or you can extend international, we can expand. Where is the end? But you can expand yourself, but unless we come to the point of loving the Supreme Person, cannot have tranquility or peace of mind. Prabhupada said that is the secret. Just like watering the tree. You can pour water on the leaves, on the branches, on the twigs, on the flowers, on each and every one. But if you forget to water the root, then the whole thing's spoiled. The famous example was given early on, and it used to be a drama. We used to like to do a lot of little dramas, not so much now. But that was the bird in the cage drama, where this lady comes home and it's a beautiful bird cage, just exquisite, brass, shiny, and she gets a bird and puts him in the cage. But she puts all of her attention towards polishing the cage, dusting the cage, and the bird's in there because she's not getting water, she's not giving food and having seeds, she's not feeding the bird, she's just fixing the cage, and then the bird dies, So that's, the example. We take care of the body. Yes, we have to take care of the body. But if we don't take care of the soul that's giving the life to the body, then everything's spoiled. So that's explained. The Savai Pumsam Parodamo Yato Bhaktira Dhoksache. If we have learned how to love God, then it doesn't matter what type of religion we're following. Prabhupada said Bhagavatam is very liberal. It doesn't say, oh, you have to follow Hindu religion or this type of religion, then you'll understand God. Any religion, it doesn't matter, but to test whether you have advanced in loving God. But if we see instead of loving God, we're loving something else, which is not God, then there's no advancement. Then you can say, well, God is everywhere, God is everything. That's true. But Prabhupada said that's another thing. Without God, the person there cannot be anything. So that's the central point. That's explained as Mayatatam Midam Sarvam Jagat Avatamurtina from the Gita 9.4. Krishna says, I expanded in my impersonal feature everywhere, but I'm not there. I'm not there. So the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his devotees are recorded in the Srimad Bhagavatam, so that those who listen and recite will become purified by listening and reciting the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then one becomes purified. So that's this Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, there's 1 to 18. So as a matter of principle, devotees should read, speak, and hear Srimad Bhagavatam persistently, 24 hours daily, if possible. That is a recommendation. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Kirtanaya Sada Hari, when there's a great festival that goes on for a few days, or there's a Rath Yatra festival, and we're just chanting and chanting, you find that when you go to sleep at night, you go to bed at night, and even in your sleep, you're hearing the mantra, Kirtanaya Sada Hari. So it's actually possible to hear and then remember 24 hours a day, even in the sleep, And by reading Bhagavatam and becoming familiar with Krishna's pastimes, even those pastimes will manifest in when one is fortunate in one's dreaming state. Because the constitutional position, every living entity is that of the Lord's servant. And when a living entity is engaged in the Lord's loving service, and in that way, there's already liberation. But the devotee wants more than a simple liberation means, okay, I'm not the body, I'm the soul. That's our basic platform. But then there has to be this loving exchange. So consequently, a devotee doesn't expire just for simple mukti or liberation. Even if Krishna says, here, take it. No, I don't want that. I want you. The dynasty of Priyavart. It's glorious is the dynasty of Priyavart in which Lord Rishabhdev incarnated. And then the family of Uttanapada Maharaj, who is the father of Dhruva, is glorified due to King Pritha's taking birth. And the dynasty of Maharaj Raghu is glorified because of Lord Ramchandra appeared in that family. And then the Yadu and the Kuru dynasties, they existed simultaneously, but of the two, the Yadu dynasty was more glorious due to the appearance of Lord Krishna. But at the same time, the Kuru dynasty may be considered more glorious due to the presence of devotees like the 5 Pandavas who rendered unalloyed devotional service. So even though Krishna didn't appear in the Kuru dynasty, he was so obligated to the Pandavas' devotional service that he acted as a maintainer of the family and spiritual master of the Pandavas. So the Supreme Lord is always inclined toward his pure devotees. because they're inclined towards him. So he reciprocates, and by his action, it's clear that liberation, it's not important for the devotees. Krishna, he doesn't so easily give one the facility to become a devotee. This muktim dadati karhishitsmana bhakti yogam, directly or indirectly, it is proved that bhakti yoga is the basis for the supreme relationship with the Supreme Lord, and it's far superior to liberation. So those persons who unnecessarily engage in the bodily conceptions and create an atmosphere of materialism are always ignorant of the real self-interest. But out of his causeless mercy, Lord Rishabh, he taught the self's real identity and the goal of life. And we living entities, we're the parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. And we should therefore follow these instructions and become self-sufficient. It's a big deal. There was a lot of talk this past weekend about self-sufficiency, Devi Varnashram. But here we learned that real self-sufficiency is to follow the instructions of the Supreme Lord. And we shouldn't create unnecessary demands due to the bodily conception. So when one is self-realized, then he's sufficiently satisfied because of being situated in the original spiritual position. This Brahma Bhuta, Prasanatmana Satsati Nakansati. This is the actual goal of all living entities. In the Bhagavatam, so in verse coming up, it says, therefore, due to gross ignorance, this is like 31, so due to gross ignorance, the sleeping conditioned soul does not know that the real self-interest is taking shelter of the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu. Just trying to become happy by adjusting the material elements it's a useless endeavor. Prabhupada said spiritual life is difficult, but material life is impossible. So we can, I always use this example. You can rearrange the furniture in a room, but it's still the same room. The Supreme Personality of Godhead says that as long as one doesn't develop pure devotional service, the Shravanam Kirtanam, hearing and chanting, one must carry out his prescribed duties. This Sarvadharmam Parityaja Mamakam Saranamraja, abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. Krishna is saying this in Bhagavad Gita. Everybody knows this verse. It's probably the most quoted verse, 1866. Whatever we do, we should constantly remember Vasudeva, Lord Krishna. People are inclined to offer obeisances to demigods, but Bharat Maharaj simply wanted to please Lord Vasudeva. And this, Bhaktam Jagya Tavasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram 529, that a yajna may be carried out to satisfy a particular demigod, but when the yajna is offered to the yajna Purush, Narayan, the demigods are also satisfied. And that's the purpose of performing yajna, is to satisfy the Supreme Lord. Looking at the time thing here. So even in the Brahma Samhita, it's mentioned. Demigod worship is mentioned in Brahma Samhita, but actually the slokas advocate worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in this way, the worship of Durga, it's mentioned in Brahma Samhita as Shristi, Shriti, Pralaya, Sarana, Sakti, Rekha, Chayeva, Yasya, Bhuvanani, Vivarti, Durga, Icha, Nurpam, Api, Yasya, Cha, Chita, Sata, Sa, Govinda, Madi, Purusham, Tamaham, Bhajami. So following the orders of Lord Krishna, the goddess Durga creates, maintains, and annihilates. And Krishna confirms this in the Gita, this Maya Dakshena Bhakti Suryate Sa Characharam. This material nature is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, and it's producing all moving and unmoving things. And, so anything that's happening, so it's looking like Durga is doing what she is, creating, maintaining, annihilating. And it's all under the direction of Lord Krishna. And work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work binds one to the material world. Krishna says this in the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita. He also says that sacrifice, austerities, and charities performed without faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead are non-permanent. Regardless of whatever rituals are performed, they're called asat, non-permanent. They're therefore useless, both in this life and the next. Strong statement, 1728. Oh, Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, Krishna consciousness, they are so important. Krishna Prabhupada said this Krishna consciousness movement means we are not manufacturing anything by our, he said, fertile brains. We simply hear and repeat, but we try to explain for modern understanding without question of manufacturing, because nobody can manufacture perfect knowledge because we are imperfect. So he made this statement, we simply hear and repeat, but try to explain for modern understanding. So this is important because doesn't mean to change the message, but for modern understanding, to repeat the message in such a way that the modern person, the modern confused person with uncontrolled minds and senses can maybe become captivated to understand the message of the Bhagavatam and the Gita. Our senses are imperfect. That means we can't manufacture perfect knowledge. This perfect knowledge must be received from higher authorities. And nowadays, just like in the 60s, we were rejecting authority. We did not want to hear anything from anyone. I was like, typical stupid American woman. I want to make my own mistakes, But no, perfect knowledge must be received from higher authority. And if we want to perfect our lives, then we have to hear from the right persons. And therefore, in the Bhagavad Gita, it says, Evam parampara praptam, is famous for too. And in addition to the hearing comes the application. And this proper application of the higher knowledge is key to our spiritual success. And Prabhupada gave us such an open door to practice Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada, he was just such a genius. Of course, a genius is like somewhat of a material type of concept, but still he was a spiritual genius because he brought at a time when everything was just like whacked out, and gave us the pure, unadulterated message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And at the same time saying, now you can explain, like when I was initiated, and I was like in the third initiation, it was January of 67. There had been two previous initiations in New York, one on Janmashtami, one on Radhastami. So then he came to California, San Francisco, and first initiation happened really quick, like just a few days later. And then 4 of us were initiated, and he goes, so now you go out and preach. And we were like pre-neophyte. We were still looking at a little card with the mantra on it so we wouldn't get the words mixed up. And he's saying, now we go out and preach. And I raised my hand, but wait, how can we do that? And he goes, you simply hear what I am telling you, and then you repeat it. You can repeat it in your own way, but do not add or subtract anything. That is the parampara. So Srila Prabhupada immediately gave us a very high level understanding of Bhakti Yoga, and he expected us to practice and to preach, to teach and to preach. That is the Krishna consciousness movement. So anybody can please give I see there's some pretty advanced devotees here in my head at your feet. Mm.
I think you already said everything. Left no room for us to say anything.
Um, what I have been really seeing recently is like everything can be said, but the advanced devotees can say, they can always say even more. And I'm seeing some pretty advanced devotees here. And so I'm sure there's a lot more that can be said. Mhm. Just like 1 and 1 is 2. And then, you get into the more advanced math. Okay, well, 1/2, 1/2 plus 1 is 2. And then you break it down 1/2, 1/2, 1/2, 1/2 is 2. And, it keeps going. So I see Braja Leela, and she's an advanced devotee and a wonderful soul. And I see behind her.
Hare Krishna Malati Prabhu.
Hare
Haribol.
Krishna.
Thank you so much. As Sarvatma Prabhu said, you gave us so much. I am a little curious what you mean when you say advanced devotee. You say there's so many advanced devotees. Well,
Yes.
what does that really mean to you? And
It
what
means
should it
that-
mean to us?
Yeah, it means that devotees who have given themselves over to the process of Krishna consciousness, bhakti yoga, practicing, hearing and hearing, and then repeating, hearing and chanting. The chanting can include the repeating, giving Krishna consciousness to others, and through their practice, receiving wonderful realizations that are also shared. This is what I find that that's to me, advanced devotees. Devotees who are no longer confused and bewitched by the shining glare of material nature. Yeah.
Thank you.
You know, you know.
I also kind of wanted to reflect a little bit on this terminology you use, happy Hinduism. And you
Yeah.
gave such nice subject information about the Hindus and how they can benefit the world. And I'm just curious as you move around because you travel so much. And as you said, the temples are now, being managed by many people from that part of from India, basically. And
Yeah.
so maybe you can share some of the glories of what you're seeing.
Well, first of all, there is a great distinction for me between people from, Indian background, and Indian backgrounds are all, like there's a lot of South Africa, people from Africa, Indian backgrounds, because they have infiltrated Middle East, so many Indians. But really, when people from India take up Krishna consciousness, kind of like they're devotees. When they become Vaishnavas, they're devotees. So you don't see them so much as being quote unquote Indian. So the happy Hindus are, I'll give an example. In San Francisco, 68, it was, I think maybe in January, a man from India came to our little storefront temple. And at that point, we were still infatuated. It's just like when I took Lord Juggernauth, why did I take him? Not because I knew anything about it. There was a little sticker that said made in India. So we had that infatuation. So this man from India came, and there weren't so many people from India in America at that time. So he comes and he has all these little red strings, and he's saying, "Today is Rocky." And Raki, some of you probably know, is like you tie this little red string on another person's wrist so you become their brother or sister. So we all did that. And I remember Dayananda and myself, we came brother and sister. Everybody had a little red string on their wrist. Prabhupada came to find out, and he wrote a letter to Mukunda. What is this? Who's told you to do this? So this is simply a Hindu custom. It's nothing to do with Krishna. That was like an aha moment. Just being a Hindu wasn't enough. You had to connect to Krishna. And there's so many of these, that's my term, happy Hindu customs. He called it social custom. It's a social custom, and it's not necessarily connecting to Krishna. And so we find that, and people are coming, and quite often, they want to impose their social customs on our Vaishnava practices. And in some cases, it can kind of be modified in some way to somewhat be incorporated, but basically they're social customs, they're a distraction, but nowadays people are like hesitant to make those distinctions. You don't want to discourage anybody after all. I mean, a lot of it is based upon the fact of donations. I don't want to discourage that. But Prabhupada was clear, we want to practice Bhakti Yoga, Krishna consciousness. And we don't want to get distracted by these side things, distractive, just like I remember they came in with a bunch of sticks one time. So that stick dance, the garba, bang, 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 the sticks, particularly in Gujarat, right? They want to come and do that. Prabhupada is no. But it's almost like people don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear the Prabhupada said no, because people want to come and do it. And now their number is greater than our number. But the ones who actually become fixed in Krishna consciousness, they understand these things, and they're very effective preachers. So eventually it seems to me, I'm kind of seeing this as like, the good preachers in the Indian bodies who are going out and preaching, even outside of the Indian diaspora. They even go to American universities or, non-Indian universities. Eventually, there hopefully be a return of the wave of Krishna consciousness. Because in the 60s, we were all disgusted. We were materially depleted. We were disgusted by what was going on in life and society. We didn't want to be like, most of us didn't want to be like our parents, nice people, good people, but just beaten down by what we now understand to be material nature, the endeavor for survival. I don't see any difference now between the 60s. People say times are different, but what's different? People are still suffering, birth, death, disease, and old age. It's still relentless. And, you read the purports in the first canto describing how society is going on. You're describing the governments. And it's like, he wrote those purports before he came to America. And yet you're reading them as if it's right here, right now, any headline, any day, there it is. Perfectly describing the situation of how material energy is manipulating society and how society is with the what's the big thing now is this artificial intelligence. People are just like becoming dulled out. So there has to be, whether it's Indian bodied or not, but the Indian bodies are taking it up. And eventually some of the tired Western or, whatever other body, Africa, China, Central South America, there's going to be people who are, I'm finished, I'm done, because that's one of the qualifications for coming to devotional service. You're finished. You're done with material life. So you may feel that way, but if you don't have the message of Godhead coming from Lord Chaitanya, then you don't know what to do. And then people get frustrated. And they'll, like suicide's a big issue, even among children now, because they don't know anything better. So they're feeling so hopeless. They just give up. So I feel like, hopefully just that by following this, the people from Bharat Bhumi, by taking the message and delivering the message all over the world, as it was mentioned in that purport in Adi Leela, that there's going to be some sparks, just like the bamboo rubbing and some flames go up. There'll be some sparks. People will, oh, this is what I need. They're thirsty. Here's what I need to drink. When it's going to happen, I don't know, but it's bound to happen because this mission of Lord Chaitanya is supposed to go on for the next 10,000 years. So they have a place, but we have to keep clear about our Vaishnava practice and not become enamored by the happy Hinduism aspect.
Thank you, Malati Prabhu. Thank you so much.
And I'm not saying that as a disrespect. It's just like we need to be clear. Yeah. How's everything in Gitanagari? How are the cows? Oh.
Yeah, I think we have one of the Kahar boys here, Agari Krishna. He's there, and devotees that take care of the cows. Maybe you can share with Malati Prabhu what's going on with the cows. Maybe he's really taking care of the cows right now.
He could be.
Damodar, these are the devotees that are really connected with the cows. They're with the cows every single day. So we call them the Kahar boys. But from externally, from how we can see whenever we see, the cow seems very happy.
And therefore the cowherd boys should be very happy. And therefore the inhabitants of Gitanagari should also be very happy. It's fallout from cow care.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, there's Agari Krishna. Here he is.
He's in.
There are the cows.
There are the cows.
There are the cows.
Yeah.
Well, Malati, thank you so much for your insightful class on the activities of King Bharat. Really appreciate it.
Actually, because it was mentioning, I kind of got off my track because I had something else I was going to, which would included, because he was worshiping, right? So it was, because of where he was situated, likely he was worshiping the Shalaram Shila, the stones from the Mandaki River. And there's, it's interesting that the actual story about that river and about those stones, the Shalagram stones, but in that river there, the name of Mandaki River. So there's the river, and then there's the river bank, and there's one area about 24, I think it's 24, 26 miles along the river. So the stones are in the riverside and they are from the water. They're called Jaraja, the Shalagram stones from the water. And then there's some that are along the banks of the river. But the ones that are along the banks of the river shouldn't be taken. Only the stones from the water should be taken for worship. I thought it was kind of interesting. But probably that he was worshiping a Shalagram because that's where he was situated, Yeah. Right. So I'm looking forward to Gitanagari Rath Yatra. It's coming soon.
I think Ashadev is here. I don't know if he's there. He is. Yeah. Very well. Do you want to share anything about Gitanagari Rath Yatra?
Yes, that the highlight is Malati Mataji coming. Thank you so much for being with us.
That's not a highlight. I get there to get surcharged. I do have. I just remembered something. I do have a request. There is a devotee, Narada Muni, who is a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. And for all intents and purposes, he's probably leaving his body. He's been going, it's been months and months. It's just whatever he's tried to do to recover his health, it just doesn't work, and it's just going down. So now he's on a ventilator. He doesn't seem to respond. So I'm just asking for prayers for him. Prayers for, he's married to Veda Mata, who is a wonderful book distributor, has always been distributing Srila Prabhupada's books. And as with many devotees, of course, they're not materially together. And now her husband is definitely going to probably leave his body quite imminently. So please offer some prayers. And there's probably a GoFundMe or something, because, you know, he hasn't been able to work for a long time because of this health condition. So if you happen to see that, Narada Muni, Veda Mata, disciples of Prabhupada, but at least offer some prayers that the transition of this soul is guided by Krishna. I don't see who else could guide it, but prayers are always required and appreciated. Yeah. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Mataji. We will do that. Your
Hare
compassion
Krishna.
is effective for sure. So let's all simultaneously pray for this Narada Muni Prabhu and give our thanks to Malati Mataji for joining us this morning.
Yeah.
By
And
please,
just
everyone unmute.
he's in Florida, just like he's outside of Alachua in some kind of a care facility, but just for where he is, you know. And I just had one more question. Is there anything you'd like me to bring to your Rath Yatra festival?
You're asking me? Please
Yeah.
bring your enthusiasm and your smile and your willingness to converse with all the Vaishnavas and inspire us all in Krishna consciousness. That's all we need from you. Oh, and if you'd like to speak about the glories of Rath Yatra, we asked Vishnu Gadar Prabhu to speak, but we'd also like you to, both before the festival and afterwards. Would you be willing?
Of course, I love speaking about Lord Jagannath's glories.
Wonderful. It'll just be about 5 or 10 minutes or so, as much as you'd like. But I'll connect with you about that later. Now, if all the devotees from Gita Nagari would please give our thanks to Malati for joining us this morning. Please unmute yourself and say Hare Krishna and thank you so much. Mataji, we appreciate your visit.
Hare Krishna, Gaur
Hare
Premanand,
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mother Malati.
Nitai Gaur Premananda, Hare Krishna. Divine
Hare
Grace,
Krishna.
Srila
Thank you, Matt. Hare
Prabhupada,
Krishna.
Jai.
Please give us Bhagavatam class
Look at
every
my
week.
smile.
Haribol,
Oh,
Haribol, Haribol.
Jai Bhajali. Haribol, so many beautiful smiling faces, some of which I saw the week before at New York Rath Yatra. Haribol.
Jai. Thank you, Prabhus. Hare Krishna.
Haribol.
Oh, you only move one. It's this one here. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so it's the one that is treated. Yeah, no more. Then it's good. Yeah, very good. Thank you. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. I want to use this on that girl there.
Gary Krishna, you are unmuted, so you know.
Sorry.